right now. I want to cross over to Ivan Walunyoro, who is in Entebbe. Ivan, good morning.
Well, indeed, it's a very good morning to you, Idris. And like you said, I am coming to you from Entebbe. To be specific, I am coming to you from Protea Hotel, where I am seated this beautiful morning. And we'll be speaking matters migration. Recently, the International Organization for Migration supported the Minister of Foreign Affairs to repatriate 32 Ugandans that had been trapped in Myanmar for false jobs that were, promised to them. And after going there, some of them were being involved in online scams. But this, of course, still goes on, for we have seen not only Uganda, but many other countries still having the same issue when migrant workers get challenges. And the International Organization for Migration has partly supported in settling this. This beautiful morning, the ministers from the East African community will be meeting here at Protea Hotel to discuss some of these insights and create safe margins for how this should be handled and what actually should be done to see that this is also being addressed. But of course, drawing all these insights, we want to understand what really is expected out of this meeting, because the ministers at the end of the day will have to do a declaration on this. But I am joined by the Regional Director for East Africa, Horn, and also Southern Africa, who is France Celestine, to just paint for us or draw insights of what really is expected out of this meeting here. And Mr. France Celestine, thank you so much for joining One Morning at NTV.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Give us an insight of really what is going to happen, why this meeting happening this time?
Well, what we see is an increasing number of people on the move in East Africa. They are moving for many different reasons, for political reasons, for social economic reasons, for conflict and disasters. But the vast majority of them are moving within East, Horn and Southern Africa. Despite what you hear in the media, and you provided some examples, those are few and far between. About 5% of them go outside of the continent, and even less go outside of this region. But because we see an increasing number of people, then the East African community, the ministers gathered here today. Well, the ministers are here today, but the technical team has been here since Sunday, discussing how can we bring a better management of migration within East Africa. So the East African community is here for the very first regional consultative process to see how they can collectively address the migration challenges that we see happening, and to see how they can manage the increasing number of people on the move, both within but also outside the borders of the community.
You only supported Uganda in the recent to repatriate, like I said, the 32 nationals that were being trapped in Myanmar. And we know this is not only happening to Uganda. But what is the magnitude of these across East Africa? Because I know we have Kenyans, we have Tanzanians, we have the rest of other people that are also trapped. What is the magnitude of this?
Well, in terms of people on the move, the vast majority of them are displaced. Last year, due to the multitude of things that I mentioned, 6 million people were displaced. And then we have even more as refugees in the region. Uganda itself hosts 1.7 million refugees. And then you have the same case across the board, from Kenya hosting refugees from South Sudan, from the Congo and Somalia. We also see those who are on the move. So it's quite big in terms of people migrating. It's in the tens and tens of thousands. People displaced, it's in the millions. So for various reasons, it's important for the East African community to come together to find a way to address this as a community.
In your own words, how do you characterize migration within East Africa?
Well, this is basically what I mentioned before. You have those who are displaced by disaster, conflict, and like as I mentioned before, 6 million were displaced last year. You have those who are on the move for economic reasons, so labor migration, and there's a lot of them on the move, and this is why it's important for the EAC to meet this week to create a framework for this to happen, because labor mobility within the EAC is happening. We just need to regularize it. We just need to work with the partner states to identify, let's say there is a shortage of mechanics in Uganda, and then there is a surplus in Kenya, so to circulate that talent within the East African. You can find perhaps there is a shortage of doctors in South Sudan, but there is a surplus in Kenya. You can circulate that talent. So we are looking at even labor market information system.
And actually, that's what I was coming to, because some of the people that migrate, majorly you look at them going for labor, and some of them are being promised, can I say false labor, hopes to go into these other countries. But how you can have this mitigated? For example, we have the International Labor Organization that also does this, but somebody being safe, and for a reason, I can attest to it that some of them get trapped because of job reasons and the rest, away from conflicts, and that we have Ugandans going abroad, even to the United Arab Emirates and the rest. But making sure that you migrate safely and that.
Well, yeah, this is why IOM is advocating for bilateral labor agreements. We are supporting individual countries to work with, let's say, Uganda to sign agreements with Saudi Arabia. So you have a regulated system for those who are capable, those who have the particular skills, and match them with these countries in the Gulf or in Europe. So this is why IOM is working with this government to create a structure. And this is why it's important too for the EAC to have a common approach to these sort of things. So it's not the individual member states or partner states negotiating this, but they can have a model to follow, a template to plug into, so that you move faster, and then you, as a community, would have the upper hand in negotiating with such countries.
And as a director, what do you want to see coming up in this discussion? Because many ministers are going to be submitting different, cases, different kind of suggestions. But as a director, I can say, what do you want to hear in this meeting as far as how you're also going to take part as a key sector player? So
IOM is a member state-based organization, and all of the EAC partner states are, in fact, IOM member states. So we would like to see what works for all of our member states. And as IOM, as a partner to these member states, we would like to see firm declaration, concrete proposals to move forward. One, to address regular pathways. One, to come up with a common approach on migration. And also to have an approach that works for the people. Labor migration, there's so much talent in East Africa, and there is opening, there are jobs that can be filled by these talents. We just need to match them. So we need to find a mechanism that the ministers can agree to, that can be implemented. But first and foremost, we want a reinforcement of the free movement protocol within the EAC. We also would want to see a clear action plan, a costed action plan on how to implement these points that the ministers will probably come with.
What are some of the key countries you look at maybe having major submissions from, or in the conference that you are going for, the countries maybe that you have earmarked as an organization to maybe, for example, you could say Uganda because maybe it has many other cases of maybe illegal migrants and the rest of that, and you want to see those ministers maybe make key remarks in the conference you're going for?
I'd like for all of the partner states to be present and making these remarks. So not one weighs heavier than the other, because what we would want to see is consensus. But there are key countries that can drive the conversation. South Sudan, for example, as the chair, can drive the conversation. And if you see, and I was in South Sudan two weeks ago, it's one of the countries that is truly implementing the EAC protocols. You go to the streets, you see Ugandans selling chapati in Juba. Most of the fuel stations are managed by Somalis. In a lot of the hotels, you see Kenyans. This is the true spirit of the EAC. And all of these nationals in South Sudan working, so they can push that conversation. Uganda, that has been the driver of a lot of this forum, can and our host can be an important country to push this conversation forward. And then you have Kenya, obviously one of the powerhouses in the EAC. But every single member should step up and make their presence felt and make their voices heard and drive that conversation and create a narrative that is one East Africa and one community that is going to provide safer space for migrants, that will provide the conducive environment for these young people to grow. Because as you know, the community, the East African community, has a lot of young people. That energy has to go somewhere. It has to go in a place where they can be productive. Otherwise, they're going to create social disturbances, or they're going to cross borders and risk their lives for a better future, and to search for this so-called greener pasture.
And at the end of it all, there is a declaration that is going to be made by these ministers that are coming in today to discuss this. But you talked about it, but I want you to really emphasize, what is that key thing you want to see in the declaration as an organization, perhaps, that will facilitate the smooth flow of how you can work with these interstates in terms of labor, in terms of safe document migration and the rest. Because like you earlier said, we want to see Ugandans getting jobs in Kenya. You want to see Kenyans, they're already here, you said, in Uganda. Ugandans get jobs in Somalia, in whatever. But you as an organization, what do you really want to see in a declaration?
Well, we want to see a united East African community. We want to see a united declaration that is the unity of purpose is clear, that we want to provide safer migration. We want to provide the space for our young people to not just survive, but to thrive in that space, in their environment, in their community, so that they don't risk their lives on the high seas or in the desert. So we want to see a clear approach to how, as a system, as a community, East Africa is going to tackle the issue of irregular migration, but also to create the environment for economic growth and inclusion.